The legend of the woodsman dates back centuries. It was said that he was a man of great stature, with muscles sculpted by hard work and eyes that could pierce the soul. His name was Jack Torrance, and he was known for his deadly precision with an axe. Jack Torrance had a hardened heart, shaped by a life of losses and tragedies. Legend has it that Jack lost his family to a mysterious illness that swept through the village in a single night. Unable to bear the pain, he isolated himself in the forest, where he built a rustic cabin and made the forest his domain. Over time, his sanity began to crumble, and he came to see any intruder as a threat. Armed with his axe, he became the dark guardian of the forest, protecting it from all who dared enter. The first known victim was a young hunter named Lucas, a lad known in the village for his courage and adventurous spirit. Since childhood, Lucas had explored the village's surroundings, always seeking new discoveries and thrills. The stories about the Black Forest were irresistible to him. Tales of mystical creatures and unknown dangers ignited a flame of curiosity in his heart. Lucas decided it was time to prove to everyone that there was nothing to fear in that dark forest. On a cloudy morning, with the sky covered by a thick layer of gray clouds, Lucas prepared for his journey. Armed with a bow and arrows, he entered the Black Forest with confident steps. His clothes were suited for the humid climate, and he carried a backpack full of provisions and a compass to ensure he would find his way back. The first few days were relatively uneventful. Lucas encountered only common wildlife and signs of natural life. However, the deeper he ventured, the more he felt the forest changing around him. Sunlight was almost non-existent, blocked by the dense canopy of trees, and the silence grew increasingly oppressive. On the fourth night, Lucas began to notice something strange. He felt as if he were being watched. Invisible eyes seemed to follow his every step, and the rustling of leaves sounded like sinister whispers. Determined to ignore his growing fear, he continued his exploration, determined to prove that the stories were just legends. On the fifth day, the sensation of being watched became unbearable. Lucas decided to set up camp earlier, seeking a safe place to spend the night. He lit a small fire and sat beside it, trying to warm himself and ward off the fear. However, the crackling of the fire seemed to echo in the darkness, amplifying the sense of vulnerability. As sleep began to overtake him, Lucas was startled by a distinct noise, a sound he couldn't identify. He quickly stood up, grabbing his bow and arrow, his eyes wide as he searched the darkness. It was then that he saw a tall, robust shadow moving among the trees. Lucas's heart raced as the figure emerged from the darkness, revealing a huge man with bright, insane eyes. Before he could react, the woodsman lunged with an axe in hand, delivering a swift and brutal blow. Lucas's last thought was pure terror as the axe blade found its mark. Days passed with no news of Lucas. His friends and family began to worry, and soon a search party was organized. A week after his departure, Lucas's mutilated body was found at the edge of the forest with deep axe marks. His eyes were wide open in a final look of terror, and his body was pinned to the ground with brutal force. The villagers were horrified, and the story of the woodsman gained even more traction. Lucas's death could no longer be dismissed as a legend or a horror story to scare children. Fear spread through the village like a shadow, and few dared even approach the edge of the forest. Clara was a determined young woman, the daughter of the village leader. Unlike most villagers, she didn't blindly believe in legends and horror tales. Clara was a practical, rational person who always sought the truth behind the stories circulating in the village. Lucas's death deeply affected her. They had grown up together, and seeing his mutilated body was a harsh blow for her. Clara was determined to discover the truth about what happened to Lucas and end the terror that haunted the Black Forest. Against her father's wishes, Clara began organizing an expedition to enter the forest and investigate. She knew the task wouldn't be easy, but her determination was unwavering. She gathered a group of brave volunteers, people who shared her courage and desire for justice. Armed with lanterns, weapons, and unyielding courage, they prepared to face the unknown. As they advanced through the forest, Clara and her group felt a dark presence watching them. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the crack of branches underfoot and the distant murmur of the wind. The forest seemed alive, breathing and watching every move of the intruders. Clara tried to stay calm, but couldn't ignore the feeling of being watched. Every step felt heavier than the last. The trees formed a wall of shadows around them, and the darkness seemed to swallow the lantern's light. Clara led the group with determination, but she couldn't ignore the growing sense of dread. The forest was alive, and something or someone was watching their every move. After hours of walking, the group found the remains of Lucas's camp. The site was deserted and grim, with the fire extinguished and Lucas's belongings scattered on the ground. Clara knelt beside Lucas's backpack, feeling a wave of sadness and determination. The tension increased with every step. The group advanced slowly, following the woodsman's tracks. The air was charged with electricity, and every sound seemed amplified. Clara led the group firmly, but her mind was alert, prepared for any eventuality. On the second night, while camping near a stream, Clara was awakened by a piercing noise. She quickly stood up, wielding a knife, her eyes searching the darkness. Everyone in the camp was awake, looking around in fear. Suddenly, one of the volunteers, Joao, screamed in agony. Everyone turned in time to see the woodsman with his bloody axe, dragging Joao into the darkness. Clara and the others ran after him, but soon got lost in the thick mist. Joao's screams ceased abruptly, leaving only the echo in the forest. But the only response was the forest's oppressive silence. Clara felt a lump in her throat, but knew she couldn't give up. The woodsman was real, and now they were in his sights. With Joao's loss still fresh in their minds, the group moved forward with more caution. Clara knew they were getting closer to the truth, but each step also took them deeper into the woodsman's domain. Clara was devastated, but even more determined to end the woodsman's reign of terror. She knew they couldn't continue with a direct approach. She decided they should find the woodsman's cabin and catch him off guard. During the day, they tracked the signs left by the woodsman, noting axe marks on trees and old campfire remains. Finally, they found the cabin, a rustic, grim structure surrounded by a garden of skulls and bones. The group was scared, but Clara encouraged them to continue. That night, Clara and her group surrounded the cabin. She gave the signal, and they all attacked at once, breaking down the door and storming inside. Inside, they found Jack sitting in a chair with a vacant, insane look. Before they could react, he stood up with surprising agility and began attacking with his axe. The fight was fierce and brutal. Clara fought with all her strength, dodging deadly blows and trying to wound the woodsman. Her companions fell one by one, but she didn't give up. Finally, in a desperate act, Clara managed to disarm Jack and drove a stake through his heart, ending his life with a scream of rage and pain. Clara emerged from the forest, wounded and traumatized, but alive. She told the village what had happened and about the end of the woodsman. The Black Forest was still a place of mystery and danger, but the immediate threat had been eliminated. Clara was seen as a heroine, but she knew that the forest's shadows still held dark secrets. Over time, the story of the woodsman was told as a warning to those who dared challenge the Black Forest. Jack's cabin became a place to avoid, and the forest, despite its natural beauty, remained a place of respect and fear.